Today, let's make a shirt perfect for work. So if you are new here, I do sewing and DIY related content. Today, we are going to be making new look pattern 6704 to make a shirt for work from this amazing fabric I got from Mood. I already cut out all the pattern pieces, so let's get started. All I had to do first was cut out the fabric. This was very simple to do. The pattern actually told you specifically how to lay out your fabric so you can get the most use of it, and I found it very straightforward. As you can see, I have all of my pattern pieces here, and what I ended up doing was serging all of the fabric so I could get nice raw edges. I will say at the end I did have to go back through and do this, as the pattern said I was a size 10 according to my measurements, and this ended up being way too big. So I had to reserge everything, but I did serge everything at first. Now what I started to do was just follow along with the pattern step by step. You had to make these little straps to go with the buttons and turn them right side out. And then you had to use, because there's 3 buttons on the front and then 2 on either sleeve. So this is the front panel lining, and it helps you get a nice clean look for both like the front and the back for where the buttons would go. So you had to press it down at first, and then those little straps that I made to hold the buttons in, you then had to place them on here. So the pattern piece itself for this did have darts, so little spots for where you were supposed to place these. So it was very simple to follow. I didn't mark these on the fabric, but I decided to put the pattern here as well, just so that you could see that where those little circles are, those dots are where you would kind of line up these 3 little pieces. And it even told you the direction to place them at. And then what you're going to be doing is you put it onto the front portion of your shirt, and I took a seam there, and then this allowed you to have like a really nice and clean look. So you can see that those are my little holes, the button loops, I guess is what you call them. And then you just cut this open so that you would be able to kind of flip and turn this right side out. The one thing that I will wish that I had done when I cut this open was that I really trimmed that corner at the bottom. So there's that point, and you go through and you top stitch this when you fold it back over. But you can see at the bottom that mine's sort of bunched up a little bit. And I was able to get this to smooth out when I used an iron as well as a steamer. So like now I do not really have that issue anymore. But if you had gone through and really clipped that stitch, you would have been able to get this to lay down so much more smooth. You also could have taken that whole seam out and redone it. Next, it was time to do the shoulder seam. So I feel like this is always a very exciting part of any shirt. Very simple, very straightforward, just going through and with right sides together, matching up the shoulder seams and taking a straight stitch. So this is what the shirt looked like so far. This is where I started to notice it was a little big, as even though you were going to be gathering the collar and then technically the cuffs of the sleeves, just the sides looked really large on me, but I thought that maybe it was going to come together as we kept moving forward. So what we did next was I gathered the collar. So again, this is all listed out very simply in the pattern, but you take those 2 basting stitches and then pull the thread, and then you have your collar pieces themselves. So it had you do this like folding technique where you folded the fabric over about like 1/4 of an inch, I believe is what it was, and then you have like your collar lining as well as your actual collar piece, and you're going to, with right sides together, piece those together, and then you take a seam around all 3 of those edges, leaving that curved edge open at the bottom. So I just used my quilting clips again and sewed all 3 of those, and this is going to be the collar for your shirt. Then you just understitch the lining to that collar so it would lay nice and smooth. Once I did that, I just pressed everything out as it was coming along really well. I actually really like how the collar looked. I think I have a thing where I just like sewing collars. They always look so nice when they turn out. Then what you had to do was, with right sides together, pin your collar to the shirt itself. So you had to make sure that the gathering matched how large the collar was. I found this was actually pretty straightforward to do. And then you just flipped your collar over, and that portion that you had folded earlier, that kind of like acts as a nice little cover for your raw edges. So then I just went through, I actually did my pins, I did them horizontally so that it kind of was moving along as I top stitched it to get the collar to be nice and flat. So this is what it looks like. It has that really nice collar with a really nice top stitching. I think it turned out really nice and pretty. It looked really good, and the gathering looked really nice on it as well. Next, it was time to start working on the sleeves. The sleeves were a little bit more complicated. As you see, they have those 2 dots, and that was to help with when we're adding the buttons to the sleeve. So I pin there, and then you sew through where those 2 markings are so that you have a spot that's a little bit more reinforced. Looking back on it, I think I should have noticed that things were starting to be a little bit too big at this point, because this little gap that you're making, like you're going to fold over the fabric once and then you kind of fold this in again so that you get almost a rolled hem effect. And it was definitely too small of a gap for how large the sleeve still was. But anyways, I took the seam and I will now know for the future. When I was trying to attach the curve of both sleeves onto the shirt, the cat was trying to help me the entire time. So again, I just used quilting clips. She tried to sit on it, but with right sides together, pinning both the sleeves to either side of the shirt. This was very straightforward and there were markings for you the entire time, so you didn't have to worry about it. Next, it was time to actually sew the entire sleeve and side portion of the shirt together. I also took this time to do the basting for the cuffs as well as sewing on those extra little button loops. Once I had that done though, I did go ahead and just hem the bottom of the shirt. So just doing a simple rolled hem. I was just trying to do a lot of easy steps all at once to knock them out. This is different than what the pattern instructions said. Next, it was time to work on the cuff, so this followed a very similar pattern as the collar did, where you basically sew 3 sides of the cuff. You have that one side that has that little folded edge, and then you just go around and you sew it as well as understitch it. Once I did that, you then pressed everything out, so again, very similar to the collar, which was really nice to kind of follow that exact same pattern. So this is what my sleeve looked like right now, and I knew that I needed to go through and baste it more. So I did that one stitch before, now I finished that stitch, and this is what the sleeve looked like. I then gathered it all up and got the cuff to fit on the sleeve. So again, this was just a lot of gathering, pulling the threads to make sure that it would fit inside both sleeves. And once I had something that looked good, I went through and just took that seam all the way through. Now, very similar to the collar, you had to go through and top stitch this as well. So I just used my pins in a horizontal way to make sure that I was catching both that lining behind it as well as over top of it. And I just went through, kind of trimmed up some of this extra fabric as well so that it wouldn't be as bulky when I did get that cuff on, and then when I did start sewing it, it'd be easier to sew. So here's what my shirt looks like. Technically at this point it would be done with the machine sewing, as it has the cuffs, it has the collar, it has all the button loops, and it was looking good. So what I needed to do now was to attach the buttons actually onto it. I bought these buttons off Amazon. I really liked how they turned out. It was the exact same navy blue as the bows, and they were kind of like a fabric covered button, so it made it have like a really nice and elegant touch, I thought. And these were very simple to sew, as there's only kind of one hole in the back for you to sew the button into. So I just went through and sewed all 5 buttons onto my shirt, and this is what it looked like at this point. It was way too big. You can see on the sides it's huge, the sleeves feel too large. It was just kind of disappointing, as I did all this work for something that didn't even fit me correctly. So what I ended up doing was doing a little tailoring and taking in the sides. So I specifically took off, I think, about 1.5 inches on both sides, and then on the sleeves took another inch. And I first basted it, tested it out to see how that would fit, and it fit really well. So then I just went through and finalized that stitch using a normal size stitch, and then I redid the serger. But this is what it looks like. I think it's really fun. I was able to get it to fit very nicely when I was wearing a shirt underneath. And then it even works really well for if I want to wear it to work. I can wear it with some nice green or navy blue pants. And it turns out as a really fun shirt, perfect for work. I hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell me what you want to see next.